Hello, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Shay, I am your host. And if you're new, welcome to the podcast. I do podcast episodes from the latest pop culture to nerdy recent events, also things that are happening in the world, really, that I believe that need to be put on my podcast, I think. So this episode this week, or this month, I'm not sure if I'm going to do weekly podcast now, but I'm going to start a new series called Time Travel. Yeah, something like Doctor Who or Back to the Future, if you want to call it. But I love history and I'm a bit of a nerd about it. And it was all down to shows like Horrible Histories that was on CBBC channel, that is part of BBC. Those episodes of history, from gory Romans to the Victorians to Georgians, I learned a lot from them, and yeah, it's kind of based from that. I loved history since then. So this episode is about Ireland and Cork, precisely in the 1840s. So the 18th century, basically. If you were in primary school in Ireland or secondary school here in Ireland, you very well know you had to learn about the Irish Famine. So I'm currently reading a book called The Hungry Road by Martia Conan McKenna, and it's all due to that, and we're going to talk about and learn about the Irish Famine. Let's go. Ireland was ruled directly by Westminster as part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland from 1801 to 1922. So, strained relations between many Irish and their government soured further because of the famine, heightening to ethnic and sectarian tensions, boosting the Irish nationalism and republicanism in Ireland. The power at the time was ruled by the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland and Chief Secretary for Ireland. Ireland had sent over 105 members of Parliament to the House of Commons in the UK. The Irish did elect 28 of their own to sit for life at the House of Lords. Between 1832 and 1859, 70% of the Irish representatives were landowners or sons of landowners. During the 18th century, the middleman system for managing landlord property began. The English and Anglo-Irish families were the owners of most of the land, held more or less unchecked power of their tenants. Some estates were vast, largely, for example, Earl of Lucan. You're going to hear him a lot about this guy in the podcast episode. He owned more than 60,000 acres of land. But the most of the landlords were absent as they lived in England, so that meant the tenants weren't being checked by the landlord. The tenants were also on minimum wage to raise crops and livestock for export, and money was sent straight over to the UK. In 1845 to 1852, the Great Famine began and spread all over Ireland. In September 1845, a fungal disease, late blight, appeared and destroyed about 1/3 of the country's second or main crop of potatoes. Following year, the blight returned and affected the entire potato harvest in 1846. Food shortages, spiraling of food prices, food stealings, and food riots began. People of Cork County swarmed into Cork City to search for aid, and according to the Cork Constitutional, described them as walking masses of filth, vermin, and sickness in April in 1847. In February in 1847, 49 residents of a Cork warehouse died from hunger. Captain Robert Bennett Forbes, commander of the USS Jamestown ship, arrived to Cork from Boston in April in 1847 with 800 tons of relief provisions to be distributed out in Cork. In West Cork, in Skibbereen, poor law unions and surrounding districts, food was available but prices were so increased the poor couldn't afford it. Wages for men were volunteered to work on public works. Working on new roads were disjunctioned due to the less pay. A report of a charity worker travelled to, I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, and I am sorry, Agad Down between Ballydehob and Skibbereen said, quote, dead were wrapped in calico bags, lying in reusable coffin, or known as a strapped sliding coffin, which meant when they were put into a grave, they were put in a coffin and the bottom fell open and the body just fell into the grave, really. Visitors from Irish, British and Americans found absence of children's games and no customs for funerals. The government response to the failure of staple food of the poor were determined by prevailing agony of political economy. The potato blight returned to Europe in 1849. By then, the Land War began. The movement was organised by the Land League, continued the political campaign for the 3 Fs issued in 1850 by the Tenant Right League during the famine. People did donate money to the Irish. Charities in Calcutta donated over £14,000 raised by Irish soldiers who were fighting in Calcutta. Pope Pilvis IX, I don't know which number that is, and Russian Tsar Alexander II sent funds. Queen Victoria, who was their queen at the time, only donated £2,000 at the time, and the US President James K. Pollock donated $50, and Abraham Lincoln donated $10, which was converted into 2019 was about $307. So you'll be wondering how much was rent back then when the tenants were paying for land plots. It was less than £4 if it was a small plot, and if it was a large plot, it'd be upper than £4 really, yearly also. So if tenants couldn't pay, they were clearing them out. When larger plots were more expensive, farmers did find struggle. West Clare had the worst areas for eviction, turning out thousands following Mayo, and the Earl of Lurkin was the worst evicting landlord at the time. The majority of immigration happened as well to England, Scotland, South Wales, North America and Australia. Strong influx of Irish immigrants was to Liverpool, mostly from Cork also. Majority of the Irish travellers travelled to America with McCurlin Line. Over 100,000 Irish immigrated to Canada in 1847. In 1850, Irish made up to a quarter of the population of Boston, New York, Philadelphia and Baltimore. Before the famine, there was 8.75 million were living in the Isle. Over 1 million died from the hunger and disease, but it's still not fully known if that was the exact number at the time. In 1845 to 1855, over 2 million Irish left Ireland at the time. This was reduced the numbers of people in County Cork. There was 854,118 and it reduced down to 649,903 people. In Cork City, the population did increase from 80,700 to 85,745 people, according to census. So this is a very short episode because it's only about 10 minutes. I had about 4 pages written of history, but it came out fairly fast than I thought. So before I end the podcast, I want to play an audio clip of a poem about the famine, and it's called Quarantine. I hope you enjoy, mind yourselves, and I see you guys all very soon. Let me know actually what you want as the second episode for the time travel. Bye.
Quarantine by Ivan Boland. In the worst hour of the worst season of the worst year of a whole people, a man set out from the workhouse with his wife. He was walking, they were both walking, north. She was sick with famine fever and could not keep up. He lifted her and put her on his back. He walked like that west and north, until at nightfall under freezing stars they arrived. In the morning they were both found dead, of cold, of hunger, of the toxins of a whole history. But her feet were held against his breastbone. The last heat of his flesh was his last gift to her. Let no poem ever come to this threshold. There is no place here for the inexact praise of the easy graces and sensuality of the body. There is only time for this merciless inventory. Their death together in the winter of 1847, also what they suffered, how they lived, and what there is between a man and woman, and in which darkness it can best be proved. Narrated by Shamuzi.